Let's kick it off. My name is Dave Will. I am going to share my screen with you right now. Today's topic, driving renewals through targeted engagement. And this today is 80% about water quality association. And that's why I have my friends on here with me. I want you to welcome Jonathan Adams and Monica Sanchez. Jonathan, VP for Innovation at WQA, and uh, Monica, the member relations manager. So Monica, it does a lot of the work when it comes to the engagement. And Jonathan, you do a lot of finger pointing. Is that about right?
I do also take credit.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's funny. I am the co-founder and CEO of PropFuel. And if you're not familiar with PropFuel, it's the foundation of the effort that WQA has done around their member engagement. So allow me a second and forgive me if if you're familiar with us or using PropFuel already. But PropFuel is a insight and engagement system. Sometimes people say it's a survey system. Sometimes people say it's an email system. I never say either one of those things because it crosses all of these things. It works via email. You may be using almost everybody uses us for the email exchange, which you can see in these pictures over here. But there's SMS functionality. About I want to say maybe 15-20% of our clients are using it for SMS. And brand new, super excited. We got some beta testers right now using PropFuel for website interactions. If you're intrigued by that, just shoot me a note. We're looking for beta testers this quarter, and then January we're opening it up to the public. Super, super cool. And it's essentially taking what you do in email and putting it on your website. Jonathan, did you know about that?
I didn't, but I will definitely hit you up after this.
Now you know. Anyway, it's the whole process here is around ask, capture, act, ask questions, capture insight. And that's the goal is we're asking questions as much as we can to learn more about individuals and the aggregate, but really the goal here is to capture as much information about an individual as we can in an automated way to trigger relevant actions for them, a personalized member experience. Now, with that, let's talk about the renewal process. One of several of the problems laid out here, I don't know why I said one of the problems, four of the problems with what I'll refer to as the traditional renewal process is the data component. The data, in many cases, in water quality associations, a trade association, part of the data challenges with trade associations is the keeping up with the primary contact. Not just the primary contact, but the roster as well. If you're not a trade association, then it's simply keeping up with the title or the correct email address or the organization that somebody's working for. Very manual process in many cases. It's still surprising to me how many people have not automated the process, but even with an automated process, you get to a point where there's just so many people, you have no idea what's going on with them, and that's when you pick up the phone, chasing people down after or in the grace period, and then, of course, after the grace period. Associations are the only organizations I've ever met that allow a 3-month grace period or any grace period for that matter. Can you imagine if Netflix said, oh, well, you haven't paid your bill, but we'll let you keep using it for 3 months? That'd be awesome, but it just never happens. And then you have the lack of insight and engagement. The engagement piece often comes because we don't have insight. And so we're not personalizing our exchanges, and therefore the relevance of our interactions with the members goes way down, and they're less likely to click on things to engage. They're certainly not telling you what it is, what their sentiment is and what their intent is. And that's data that allows us to reduce the amount of follow-up that we have to do. Having said that, I spent too much time on that myself. Jonathan, I'm curious if you have any insight on where was WQA prior to using conversational engagement as the methodology for renewals? Where were you in the traditional approach?
Yeah, so we were struggling with a number of these points that you brought up. And we weren't sure which area to attack first or even how to approach it, right? Whether it's wondering if we have the right person when we're, 3 months into um, the grace period, right? And understanding maybe we're hitting the wrong person. Monica is a spectacular member relations manager, but she is like a one-woman show in a lot of regards. So, there's only so much that she can do and so many people that she can reach at one time. And then, yeah, it's a lot of one-way conversations, right? We did a lot of talking at our members, not talking with our members. So those were kind of some of the struggles that we were facing.
I like the way you put that. Did you say talking at your members, not with them?
Correct.
Yeah, I like that. I'm looking through the chat here, just taking a little side note here, looking through the chat here, and I think I see as many clients as non-clients. I think that's great. I'm really, really glad to see you guys in here because um, of course, we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of what you're doing with Prop Fuel. And if this can spark some ideas, even better. Again, the WQA, Jonathan and Monica are coming at this from the perspective of a trade association. But and while some things may be a little bit different, you'll notice that you can extrapolate that and apply it to a professional or individual association. Now, of course, a lot of organizations have some individuals and some organizations that they interact with. So there's always those hybrids. All right,
And Dave,
Monica.
sorry,
Yes.
before you move on, I
Yeah,
just
yeah,
want to touch on
please.
something. You mentioned monitoring the roster, and that was another big one for us. So
Hmm.
with the trade association, sometimes we would only have like a single point of contact, and no loss hurts more than losing a member because you had one point of contact and they're no longer with the organization.
That, Jonathan, really interesting because that happens for us too. Oftentimes we have very little churn, very few clients of ours. And just to be fully transparent, 92% of you guys stick with us, which is a very high rate for a software company. That means 8% um, uh, stop using PropFuel for whatever reason. Um, and a big part of that, Jonathan, is just that. It's like there may be one contact or one person that's really invested in PropFuel and doing great things, but if they leave the job, the rest of the team sitting there like, well, I don't know what to do. And that's very applicable to what you're saying. If you lose that primary contact, nobody else really knows what's going on with WQA and why they're members, which is why it's so important to educate not just the primary contact, but all of the contacts at the organization as a trade association. Yeah. So the question becomes, how do you break through? How do you get through the noise? How do you get people to interact and respond? And I do 20 minutes at the beginning of some webinars talking about this. I'm sure many of you have seen me talk about this insight and relevance conversation. But in a nutshell, it all comes down to personalizing the experience, creating a relevant experience, connecting with people one to one, creating this two-way exchange. And while, yes, you can pick up the phone, it's exhausting and very time consuming and quite expensive and actually ineffective. The best way to do that is using software. I happen to be a software guy, so I'm a little biased, but the methodology that we refer to as conversational engagement is ask, capture, act. That means you're starting with a question, you're listening. We call this a listening platform sometimes. I mean, to overgeneralize, but ask a question, listen, what are they saying? And then take action. And there's a ton of actions, all the way from writing something back to the database to use later, sending it over to HubSpot or in Forms or whatever to add to a group or a broadcast message, or maybe just show them something on the landing page. Now, of course, you might send them to a specific spot on the website where you're going to capture more information and guide them through the process on the website. And that's part of our new website interaction that we've built. All right. So with that's the foundation of what it is we're talking about today. With this, Monica, will you walk us through some of the campaigns that you're using PropFuel for?
Yeah, so the first one was our renewal campaign. It was just we pulled the list of all of our primary contacts that were US based um, to send this outreach to, just making sure to touch base. Previously, it was always just kind of an email that we did through a mail merge. And it was just basically either an invoice or a reminder that you had received your invoice previously. So this kind of was a change as we're coming at it from a perspective of, are we reaching out to the correct person more than anything? Because it's like I can send an invoice, or I can send an email saying, hey, reminder, but if that first contact went to someone that was the wrong person, or they're no longer there, then that kind of causes an issue there. So the first what helped with this campaign is first we're making sure that we're talking to the right person. If we're not, then we're updating that. And then, we kind of added them. So once if they told us, no, I'm not the right person, it was as simple as then updating our records in the system to this new primary contact, and then now adding them to the campaign. So now we know that this is a new primary contact. We're adding them to that next step of the campaign so that they can kind of go through the next steps. And now we're reaching out to the right person to kind of get this information from them.
And I'm looking in my notes. You use Impexium as your AMS, is that right?
Correct.
Yeah, and Constant Contact as your email system.
We did switch to MailChimp, so we're using MailChimp now.
Okay. All right. Uh, this to me is very comparable to making sure that you have the right contact information for professional associations. But I suspect there's a very real similarity. I'd be curious if anybody here who is primarily professional association, but has organizational members as well. Do you run into that situation where at certain organizations your primary contact disappears, or like I would imagine you do. I'm curious how you handle that. Um, yeah, so the process of this yes or no makes it quite simple to mimic in other broadcast systems. Where it gets a little more challenging in other systems is doing this on a regular basis because it's quite cumbersome to set up in other platforms. But once you ask a question, you can drill down and take people down to other questions, like based on this leading to the roster, collecting the right primary contact, and then sending it directly back to the AMS. But we'll see more examples of that as well. Monica, can you walk us through this one as well?
Yep. So once we've kind of established that they were the primary contact, we were talking to the right person, we wanted to find out, are you renewing? Because like I'm saying previously in the past, it was just an email. There wasn't really, unless they hit reply on that email, we weren't asking them to do anything. It was just kind of hey, don't forget to pay, or hey, here's your invoice. So in this aspect, now I'm engaging with them. I'm asking them something. I'm asking them to give me a response back, where before it was just, here you go. So in this case, it's now, are you renewing? You know what I mean? So we're now asking them that question. Are they planning to renew? And that wasn't a question that we'd really ever asked our members. So we never really had a pulse on what we were kind of looking at, or what we can expect to see as far as who's going to renew their membership. So this kind of changed that to where now we have these people, and now we know that if they did have questions, maybe, it gave them, the opportunity to kind of say, hey, I don't know why we haven't been utilizing our benefits, and they just kind of need a reminder of it. So like, again, it was just a contact where we didn't really have before. It was like, Jonathan mentioned, we were talking at them. So it was, here's your stuff, here's your reminder, but it's not, do you need anything from us, or do you have any questions? So it allows us to ask that question, and gave us more an idea of what response we were looking at as far as renewals, but also opening that opportunity for them to ask us questions.
Monica, you know what I love about this approach is it's a massive reduction of friction. And so that's something oftentimes with software you try to reduce. You try to make things as efficient and effective as possible. And so look at how simple the email is. Oftentimes renewal emails are way wordier, right? How often do you get an email that just has so many words, you're like, I'll read it later. And then when does later ever happen? It doesn't. So now WQA, Monica and Jonathan are left wondering, well, somebody didn't answer or somebody didn't renew. Did they not see the email? Are they going to do it later? Are they not planning to renew? The only answer you really know is if they renew, which is high friction. That's a big step for a lot of people. So all you're asking here is for intent. What's your plan? And based on their plan, you can take them down different journeys. So like say, yeah, well, let's try to get them to renew now. But how often do people do exactly what they're going to say right away? It's about a third of the time, I think, that people say yes and they go to renew. Maybe it's closer to half. I don't remember the exact stats. I'm sure every organization has a different number of who clicks on this and then renews right away. But now you know exactly who to nurture. And they put them in a nurturing campaign or pick up the phone. Now you have a very targeted list of people to call because of this intent question. The people that say no, well, that's where you want to find out, well, why not? Why aren't you going to renew? And then based on that, sometimes you can woo them into staying based on, their rationale and that's truly the conversational component of it. So you ask this question, leads them to another question, and then you have an exchange and you might even pick up the phone. Yeah, I love it. And by the way, how often do you send out an email and get 24% of the people you send it to actually click on something, click through and do something with that email? Never happens.
And I
All
would
right.
actually say that might even be, if you're looking at response rate, I know like with our members, for whatever reason, they don't always click the buttons, but they will hit reply to the email and
Yeah.
they'll respond, they'll answer the question, but they're replying to the email. So, it might be a little bit higher because they're not actually clicking the buttons, but they are still engaging and responding to what I'm asking them.
Yeah. I always want to write back, you're doing it wrong. What?
I want to be like, why didn't you click the button? But I got your response and that's all I wanted. So great.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. All right. Talk to me about nurturing members.
So this one was now after we had identified, that we had the right primary contacts. We've asked them whether or not they're planning to renew it. This was them now just making sure, all right, you've said that you were planning to renew. Are you ready to renew now at this point? You've told us that you are planning. So what do you need from us at this point? Or have things changed? You know what I mean? Maybe you were planning to renew and then maybe you looked at your budget and things changed and now you're saying, no, I'm not able to renew this year. So it was just reaching back out to those people who had already said, who had told us they were looking to renew, and we're kind of expecting, more high likely that they are to renew and getting those dues in. So it's just reaching back out to them as a reminder if they said they were planning to, making sure that they are still, like it's just a nudge saying, hey, don't forget this bill's still due for you. Otherwise, if you're saying if things have changed, it's just letting us know that, okay, well, we kind of look at things and it's not going to be in our budget for the year.
I started to type out this very long answer to a question. I'm just going to take a break here and answer this question from Crystal. Crystal says, do you have issues with emails going to junk or spam? Deal with hospitals. Well, this is what I started to write is that we have a lot of clients in government, medical, financial organizations, and they tend to be surprised at the high deliverability rate. And there's a lot of variables that go into um, the algorithm that the service provider uses to determine whether or not this is spam or not spam. And one of those things is your reputation. The reputation is determined by your click-through rates, how many people are engaging in the email, like that makes things go up. Because so many people are clicking on things, we have a very high reputation score. And so our email, when I say our, I mean the emails you send through the Prop Fuel um, uh, I don't even know what I'm saying here, domain. It's not really going through, it's still going through your stuff, but it's utilizing our system to send them. So the emails that you're sending through Popule tend to have a much higher open rate and engagement rate than you'll see through the more traditional broadcast systems where you just, I don't want to say spamming people, but you're sending out a lot of information that's not necessarily getting an interaction from. Very long-winded answer to your question. All right, thank you, Monica. Let's continue on. Re-engagement.
So this was after, our suspension period, we give them a grace period until the end of January 31st. And then after that, you go into a suspended status. So once they've reached into the suspended status is when we decided to, all right, we've already exhausted our primary contact. We've reached out to them about, I think we've had like three to four check-ins with them through Prop Fuel. So now it's let's cast a wider net at this point. Now we're reaching out. We've been talking to the primary contacts. Now I'm talking to all contacts. So I'm pulling all of these companies who have still not renewed their membership from the previous year, and I'm pulling every single contact under that company. And now putting them into this campaign. And it's because if I only had the one contact, you know what I mean, it made it a little harder. So did a little research if we got the bounce back to kind of get a new email. But for the rest of them, it was, reaching out to all of their contacts. So if we had lost that primary contact, but there were still contacts within the company, it's just reminding them kind of their benefits. And again, it's like if the new person who is that may not know the benefit to why they should renew their membership and are looking at, the cost and going, oh no, you know what I mean? We're not looking to renew this bill. And so when we cast it out to all of the contacts, it gives them an opportunity to kind of then reach out and make that, case to their company to say, this is why we should be renewing the membership. And again, we found that we did have wrong contacts. And so we're able to engage with more people that way who are using the benefits. And so they were able to remind those who are actually paying the dues that, they were wanting to make sure that they renew it because they are utilizing the benefits.
I really like the way you phrased this, because when I've thought about this question, is like if your primary contact's not responding, how do you get them to respond? Well, of course, now you start to engage other people. It feels like if they are still there and they're just not answering the question, now you're kind of ratting them out. So, like, how do you do it in a way that where they're not going to feel slighted by it? And I think this is a really nice approach to that. We had a question from Jill for you, Monica. In step 3, when did you send out this email? How long after December 31st?
I think this was mid-January.
And
We
what's your
sent
grace
this one.
period?
Our grace period till the end of January 31st.
Oh, yeah, that's cool. So it's only 30-day or 31st, 31-day, 1 month grace period. That's good.
So it was just reminding them that they had actually expired, but they've not been suspended yet.
Yeah, I think when Monica started, we were at like 30, or we were at like 90 to 120 days grace period, and we've been working our way backwards.
Was there a response when they clicked each choice? Like, thank you for renewing. Here's how to reach me. Do you want to talk to that, Monica? Why don't you
Yep,
take that?
there was. Yep. So it gave them the option if they're saying we'd like to, reinstate now. It gave them the link to take them directly to the the link to actually rejoin their membership to actually pay the dues. With a sign in, I think it also gave them contact information to either email or call us if they prefer to do it that way.
So
Um,
sorry, go ahead, Monica.
no, I was just saying, and same with the other ones, you know what I mean, with any of the other responses is I think if they're saying they won't be reinstating this year, we did have the additional kind of alert. So it would send the email, I think it was set to me, just so I could, if does it need a response? If they're saying I'm not renewing or they're not reinstating their membership, it's like, depending on what they responded, I think it gave them additional, kind of similar to this is like, why aren't they renewing? It gave them those additional options. So if it's one of them that warranted kind of a call to kind of have a discussion with them, it allowed me to do that because it gave a ping alert to me to say, hey, maybe talk to this member, see if you can kind of win them back.
I'll answer that from a more software feature oriented thing. There's the ask capture act methodology, right? You have the ask and you have the capture. And based on the capture, based on the way they answer the question, that could trigger any number of actions. And there's something like a dozen, or depending on, your integrations, there could be more, but there's like a dozen actions that might get triggered. A very common one is just to show a landing page. But there may be another one that's like, if they answer this way, send them to a different question. If they answer this way, send them a different question. If they answer this way, well, we want to ask some open-ended text, like tell us more about that. Tell us more what's going on that is preventing you from reinstating this year. Um, you might write data back to your AMS and put them on a landing page. You might put them on a landing page and send them an email. So there's you might redirect them to a website. So like depending on how they answer the question, you could do any number of a dozen or so actions based on how they're answering. And now you might be thinking, as I would be thinking, well, that sounds like pretty hefty to set up, and it's actually quite easy because we have these blueprints where you click a button, and based on the AI functionality and things we know, the platform creates the entire campaign, which is really cool when it comes to like new member onboarding. That creates an entire campaign based on based on our how other clients have done it, what we think is a really good campaign specifically for you with all this AI text specifically for like WQA, and then you just go in and you edit things. So it makes it really, really quite simple to do. Very fun. All right. Let's go on. I'm going to monitor their questions as we go on to the next few slides. Go on, Monica.
What's up? Sorry.
By the numbers.
Oh, yep. So with our after our campaign, we did see a 5% increase in the renewal rate. So these are people that have responded after we did that big wide net to all of the contacts. We did get an additional 5 people to actually reinstate their membership. Overall, like we were able to quantify that we've had about 63% of engagement. Like I'm saying before, it was just a lot of it sending out. So we didn't know if people were, opening it or what they were doing with it or what was going on. So this now, at least we had a framework to go on how many people are actually engaging with those renewal emails. And then overall with that 5%, it ended up being about 65,000 in revenue total. That we were able to get back. But these were people who we were not expecting to renew their membership. They were like, all right, you're in the bucket where we're not kind of expecting that. So this, it was a nice, good chunk of change that, we weren't expecting for 2024 that we were able to kind of bring back.
Now, Monica, I may a good lawyer never asks a question they don't know the answer to, but I truly don't know the answer to this. Talk to me a little bit about attribution. Like, I'm flattered that you put this in here because it makes me think that you attribute that to prop fuel engagement. Were there any other things you were doing that might have led to an increase in your renewal rate that year?
It's just people who, they finally got the email, they finally got the letter. So it may have just been they were lacking and they just finally got to it at that point they did it. But, from our experience, and we did look at some other stuff, but we feel that that 5% is pretty accurate. You know what I mean? Because we looked at some other things and we did kind of exclude them from this overall number when we were pulling that number for this. So as far as what it looks like, I would attribute that 5% to the prop fuel,
I love it.
specifically from those responses.
Well, that's awesome. That's great to hear. There are a few more questions in here. I want to make sure we get through everything. I think we're okay in time. I have a few slides at the end that I can skip and things you guys have probably seen before. So I'm okay skipping those. I'd rather go with your question. You guys have really, really good questions. Paige wants to know, are all the initial reach outs to the primary contact strictly coming through prop fuel, or are there any other correspondence like regular emails or phone calls?
So our initial email gets sent out through, we use Outlook. We, do a mail merge process, and that's typically, a quick little note and their invoice. So that's our first touch point with them is we send them out the invoice, and then, prop fuel is when we kind of bring it in, is when we feel like those people who, we have not gotten a response from you, and we kind of want to nudge you a little bit and just make sure that your renewal, or like, saying we're making sure that we're contacting the correct person. So our first one initially just goes out through Outlook with the mail merge. And then, we started the prop fuel one last
Have
year.
you figured out a way to attach the invoice to the prop fuel emails?
I have not.
Yeah, so that's like, and I don't know if there is. I mean, depending on the AMS, you may or may not, but that right there is a good enough reason to say, do it in Outlook. Send the invoice, the attachment, however you send it. Is it a link or an attachment?
It's a PDF attachment, and that's part of it's personalized too. So that's part of what it is it does have
Yeah,
all their company information, their direct, you know what I mean, their specific dues for their company.
yeah.
So
That I mean, I think that's tough for organizations with lots of members, like thousands of members. You're not going to be sending out attachments, but oftentimes in those scenarios, you're dealing with individual links to the renewal page or a um, online invoice. All right, one more question, and then we'll continue on, and we'll come back. I'm gonna get to all these questions. Has reducing your grace period helped with your renewals? Did you warn them as you shortened the time frame?
Yeah, Monica, it might be helpful to go over like how we do suspended versus canceled.
and I will even go back a little further is because like Jonathan said, we were reaching into like we weren't suspending them till like April, even May, even so really far out, right? And so one of the things that we initially tried to do is we offered a early renewal discount to try to encourage people to now be paying it before that December 31st date. So that's kind of what started that process of moving those people into a sooner they're paying their dues sooner and more at their expiration date, is that we did offer that for a few years for them. So it kind of trained them to kind of pay that in that time frame. That's really what helped us, I would say. And then we did do away with it in 2022. We stopped doing that early renewal discount. But I think by that point, people were still getting used to paying it because they were expecting kind of that discount. So it did move them up. So that's kind of how I think that played a big part in how we moved our suspension date up, because they were kind of expecting that discount. It just kind of helped encourage them to pay it sooner and where we kind of would like it more.
Similarly, I said one more question. This is more like a part B. Gloria says they have a 3-month grace period. Do you think that's too much of a grace period? I'd love to hear Jonathan and Monica, your perspective, but let me just say, like, that's the most common thing that I've seen in working with hundreds, like literally hundreds of associations. It's very, very common to see a 3-month grace period. My hunch is that the answer to that question is very subjective. It depends on a lot of variables in your organization, your type of members. But I'm curious, Monica and Jonathan, do you have an opinion on that? Is 3 months too long?
Seems very high, because and then it's the question of what are you offering them in that grace period? What do they have access to? What are the benefits they're getting? Are they full benefits? So, you know what I mean? And then it's like, so if you're allowing them to have this full grace period and they're getting full benefits, well, there's no effect to them. So, where's the motivation to them, the company? And again, if they're not reaching out to the primary contact and someone else is using those benefits and they're continuing to receive the benefits well into March, then they don't know that, their dues may not have been paid. So they're like, hey, everything's good. I've been logging in since January, February. So I guess it's kind of looking at is what are you offering them when you talk about a suspension? Is what are you looking at? What kind of benefits are you still allowing them to have access to? And then, that kind of plays a role into it. For us, it was they had access to everything. So that's why we wanted to make sure that we were moving it closer up when we were suspending them so that they would know. And then also it had an effect too with our convention. We wanted to make sure that that when they registered, if they hadn't paid their dues, that they were accurately showing as a member versus a non-member. So if we were telling them that you have the grace period until January, and then you're trying to register as a member and it's saying, hey, you're not a member, you know what I mean? So it's just kind of a conflict. So we wanted to make sure that we just kind of moved everything up, and that, it just overall just helped us. And again, so it really depends on what you're looking at when you talk about suspension, what kind of benefits you're offering to them, and then, how that's going to affect other things within the association.
Jonathan, your response, it looks like it might have gone, you responded to that in the chat. It looks like it might have gone just to the host and panelists, but I'll read it right now just so Catherine and Gloria get it. We would terminate membership at 120 days. Roughly 4 to 5 years ago, we introduced the suspended concept. We worked it down from suspending at 90 days to 60 to 30, and we haven't seen any negative effects from doing this. All right. Monica, let's get back to the presentation. So we're going beyond renewals, although I would argue that just about every point of interaction you have with your members contributes to renewals. So let's go through some of these other use cases. New member onboarding.
So this is something where originally we tried to take a stab at it ourselves, and we spent a lot of time, we kind of racking our brain. We didn't know where to start. And we were just like, okay, well, we'll ask this, we'll ask them this, we'll ask that. We couldn't figure it out. So then we reached out, we got on board and we used Prop Fuel's managed services, and we worked with them, and they said, oh, we gave them our wish list essentially, saying this is what we'd like to do with this. And within a couple of weeks, we'd spent months on it trying to develop it. And we got 2 weeks, a couple of weeks back, we got this campaign back for us, and it was just touch points like we weren't doing before. We gave them when our new members came in, we gave them a welcome email, and then they would kind of just be added into our standard kind of contact list. So from there, they were just getting all of the same kind of emails that a seasoned member would get as well. So we wanted to make sure that we were touching base with them, and making sure that they understood and were getting all of the relevance of their benefits that are available to them. Because that was, when we asked them why they're not renewing, a lot of them are saying, well, I didn't utilize the benefits, or I didn't know what benefits are available to me. Okay, so one of the changes we need to do is we need to make sure that these members are understanding what benefits that they have and why they're relevant to them, and why they should continue to renew their membership. So that's part of this. It goes through, it's a monthly, we send them out a day after, kind of sending them to find out what is their primary reason for joining. And then from there, gives them links to either contact the people within those departments, or making sure they get, nice little tidbits of information that kind of gives them just a nice little overview of that benefit that's available to them, and how they can utilize that benefit, or who they need to contact to then kind of get started in, some of these programs or some of these benefits. So one of the steps that we added too is because we are a trade association and our companies are members, we often just get that primary contact, and we don't always get all of the employees. So one of the things we want to make sure that they understand is that your company is a member, and all of your employees are members while you have a membership and they're employed with your company. So we want to make sure that they're also getting all of those benefits. So we wanted to send out just an outreach to make sure that they understand that is a company membership, and they're able to then add all of their employees to it, so they can get access to the website and all of the other things, and make sure that they're also receiving the emails, and just everything that WQA has to offer for them, that their whole employees are kind of reaping the benefits as well.
This is amazing, seeing 72% of the people that answered. Now, granted, only 14% answered it, but 14% is a pretty high rate to engage in an email. But 72% of them said, yeah, I want to add more people, which makes me wonder if there would be value to making this in and of itself a unique campaign to all your members, not just new members. Like, to me, Monica, this seems like it might be a completely separate campaign. Take this out of the onboarding process and have this thing that's constantly touching base, maybe even once a year, with all your members. And when they answer the question, take them out of the campaign. If they don't answer the question, hit them up another 2 or 3 times to bump that 14% up to 50 or 60%. Like, you may find you're growing your membership, your at least organizational membership, significantly if you can get this question out to other people. There seems like a super high value question. Something to think about. Happy to work on that with you too, Monica.
And I have noticed, so, I do go through all of our new members, and I do notice that a lot of our companies do have additional contacts. So, I don't know if it's entirely attributed to that, but, typically we would just have one contact for new members. So we are showing a lot more contacts in these new member companies.
Yeah, that's great. And I think if there's one you want to point out, by all means, but I think this is just what we're showing over the next few slides are other questions you ask in the new member onboarding process. Are these monthly?
I think it does go into a monthly process after the first few. So we wait a day, and then we send them that first one. And then from there it goes, I think it's a week, and then it goes into a monthly process after that. So it's a monthly with these additional benefits.
So
And we do, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, please.
No, I was saying we do when we ask an additional question, what was your main kind of reason for joining? We do have this one where we do go back and ask them again and make sure that, so they can touch base on more of those benefits.
Yep. So what I love about this one is what you're doing is I always say that technology is there to enable more human interaction. And this is a good example of that is here you are in this automated process saying, hey, you want to set up a call? And I suspect you have this set up so if it says yes, please, it triggers an alert that goes to one of you guys. It says, hey, this person wants to set up a call, or maybe it brings them to a calendar link to book the call. I don't know exactly how you have that configured.
It actually
It,
does both. So it gives them it's
oh,
saying,
yeah.
hey, what time, it asks them what time is good for you, essentially, like what, what's the best time to reach you and what's the best contact information. Or it says, here's our link to, we added with bookings through Teams. So it clicks on, they can just click the link and then go on my calendar and plop some time in.
Phenomenal. That's great. And then I know in a lot of these, we're not showing the full journey, but in something like this, and I don't know your campaigns as well as you, but in some of these, like this one, you might ask for open-ended components right after this. So if they give you a 1, you might ask a different open-ended question than if they give you a 5. So there's journeys that you can take throughout this entire path. How do you prefer to learn? Now what do you do with this? I would imagine if they like to attend webinars, you show them a bunch of webinars where they can find webinars. If they like to read articles, you show them articles. Do you send this back to groups so that you're communicating with those groups of people in a different way? I would imagine you need a rather large audience to make that worth the time.
Yeah, it's in this with that one. For us, it's just directing it to that benefit on the website. So if they're saying they like to attend webinars, then it's directing them to our archive of webinars on the website. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So it's more directing them to the benefit on our website.
By the way, one thing to point out in all of these is look how short the prompt is. And this is one of the characteristics of conversational engagement. When you meet somebody or you're talking to somebody at a cocktail party or on the street or somebody that your neighbor, rarely do you go in with a whole soliloquy, with a whole giant essay, and then ultimately ask or go to the call to action. What we're trying to do is mimic conversational engagement, which is very short. Like, hey, I hope you've been taking advantage of that, of what we have to offer. Would you like more information on these things? Like, to me, it's a little markety. Sorry, Monica, and I know you've been working with our team. I like the questions that are more about well, that is very much about individual preference, but like I can't imagine myself asking somebody this in a conversation. So that was a bad example to show. But like this one, for example, like, hey, there's tons of ways you can learn it with WQA. Like, what's your preferred method of learning? Like, that's something I could imagine asking somebody in a conversation based on how they answer. It's going to trigger a different action. These are great. By the way, also you'll notice in here sometimes like a comma or a hi. These are screenshots from tests, and that's why you're not seeing the token didn't actually fill in a name there, but these would never go out looking like that. These would have a first name, for example. This last one you have here, Net Promoter Score. This is a good example, one that leads to the question of what could we do better? What would make your score better? And the Net Promoter Score feedback is incredible. Do you guys use that? Does that spark conversations between you and your members?
We've not gotten to that check-in yet because we just launched our new
Oh,
member onboarding this year. So I am
yeah.
curious to see some. So there are a few check-ins that we have on there, but not actually been sent out yet. So this is one that I'm curious to see what kind of response we get from them because it's not actually no one's actually received that one yet.
It's we use it at PropFuel too. We send it to all of our clients, and I personally read all of your responses to that. Like the score is less meaningful to me, although I like to I like to see a high score. I'm very competitive, but I really like seeing the interaction and the feedback, and it's unusual that I won't respond to that personally. Um, Leadership conference registrations.
Yeah, so I can speak to this one. So the move to use this actually we started earlier in the year in March for our annual convention. This mid-year leadership conference is a smaller, more intimate event with our composed primarily of our volunteer leaders. But in both cases, there's been a trend within the events industry of attendees registering later. So people are booking travel later, people are signing up and registering just later than they traditionally would. So um, what we hope to get out of both this campaign and the one we did earlier was to understand, what is their intent? Are they going to show up? Are they not? How should we, we like to give our events team as much early warning as possible. And, if we do see that we're going to be, substantially over or under, we want to try to do whatever we can to adjust while there's still time. And so for this campaign, we asked again a simple question: are you planning to attend mid-year? And this was we segmented our audience. So this is our primary audience. This is our volunteers primarily that are already among our most engaged members. And so we saw a 68% open rate, which is fantastic. And we saw a 16% response rate. So for those who said yes, we led them down a path. For possibly, we gave them kind of another value prop for the event and tried to sway their decision making. For the people who indicated no, we did two things. One, we asked them why, so we get a feeling for why people aren't planning to attend the event. But we also let them know, like, hey, thanks for your feedback. We won't email you anymore about this event, but we look forward to seeing you next year. And that's part of our overall strategy. We want to make sure that when we are messaging people, once they indicate that they're not coming to our event, we want to take them off our mailing list so that it just doesn't become inbox or trash fodder for them, and we're not bombarding them with promotions for an event they don't intend to attend.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Yep, and you
Anything
can
to
see the
comment on?
breakdown of what our follow-up questions were, and where people responded. So it gave us a lot more confidence going into both of the events. And we have a feeling for why people are not attending. And again, similar to you, I like to go through and see kind of what are some of the reasons that people are using or are indicating. And those comments are sort of a gold mine. And being able to peg people, if you have someone who's one of our premier members who's indicated that they want to attend, that can trigger a phone call to them or just a quick message. Hey, sorry, we won't see you at mid-year, right? And you're still keeping that engagement up and going, even though they're not going to be attending the event.
This might be a good time to comment on this. Jill was very delicate and sensitive, and I appreciate that. In sending a note just to the host and panelists here saying HubSpot has a feature where we're able to merge a custom payment hyperlink into the renewal email. As I think most platforms have a way to merge like tokens, including payment hyperlinks and so on, as does Propfuel. Essentially replacing the PDF attachment. And then, Jill, I really appreciate you saying this. I suppose HubSpot is a competitor to Propfuel, so just sending this note to the host, which was very kind of you. Having said that, I want to address that. I'd be lying if I said I've never heard somebody say, well, we have HubSpot, we think we can do this in HubSpot. I think you can try. You can do things like this in HubSpot. I think it's limited. HubSpot is designed to be a broadcast system. That's what it's designed to do. We have somewhere around 270, 280 clients right now, all associations. And of that, about 10% of them, about 30, more than 10%, about 30, 35 or so of our clients use HubSpot for their broadcasts and some very sophisticated broadcast messages. But because of what you've seen here, because of all the different use cases for conversational engagement, It's just difficult to stay on top of all that interaction in HubSpot. And so while, yeah, occasionally we bump into HubSpot as a competitor, usually we look at HubSpot as a connector, as an integration, as a complementary tool to Propio. But thank you, Jill, for your sensitivity in that. I see a couple questions coming in. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, and I love all the interaction we're getting from people in this conversation. So I'm going to minimize these next slides. Forgive me, I'm going to fly through these. We will send these out so you can scan them. Here we have a bunch of examples, but Jill, this is what I was referring to when there's so many places where you're going to want to create this asking methodology, and this whole methodology of asking questions. It's everything PropFuel is designed to do. We're very, very specific in what we do really, really well. And that is engaging by asking, capturing, and taking action. Now, sure, you can mimic that with some platforms, but it's clunky and very expensive and time consuming to do that in many other platforms, which is why you can do so much as long as there's an opportunity to create a conversation with somebody. That's kind of the mindset. Um, uh, I I'm going to take this time to focus on questions, but if you'd like, feel free to look through these as we send the deck out. Gosh, there's so much in here I really want to tell you guys about, but this at this point would be just blustering about cool stuff we can do in PropFuel. I think the value of this was around WQA. What I would like to do is focus on this and then get to a couple of the remaining questions. We have a WQA case study. I think Brittany posted the WQA case study, which is a short summary of what you saw here today. I don't know that you're going to learn anything new in that case study. And then we would love to talk, if you're not using PropFuel and you want to see how you can utilize it and how it integrates maybe with HubSpot or with some other systems that you have with your AMS, how you can incorporate this into your specific approach to engagement, that's where you'd want to book a demo. And so there's a link in there to book a demo as well. Having said that, throw your questions in here. Jonathan, Monica, Kimberly is curious, how does your organization measure engagement? And in fact, maybe Kimberly was asking that of everybody, but I'd be curious for WQA, how would you measure engagement? What are some of the metrics you look at?
Sure. So it's a lot of it is just waiting and in terms of how we view the members' actions. So if someone is, let's say, a member company has someone who volunteers, there's a certain amount of points that are attributed to their engagement. If they have someone on the board, there's a higher amount that's attributed to their engagement, and all of our different touch points kind of factor into that, whether they're a new member renewing, if they're exhibiting with us at our show, if they're a sponsor. We kind of score them based on that at different levels and different point ratings.
You know, I want to, hopefully this isn't too silly, but the way we've seen a lot of people measure engagement is through open rates. I'm not a huge fan of open rates. I think open rates are at best a good way to compare one email to another in terms of exposure, but it certainly doesn't mean this many people opened your email. So open rates are unfortunately one of the most common vanity metrics I think that exists out there. I love clicks. Show me the number of clicks and how many people click through something. Naturally, conversion is the best, but it's also very hard to measure sometimes, like the conversion rate. And then conversion meaning every email has intent. And so if you want to get somebody to do something, how many people did that thing you're trying to get them to do, right? So that's conversion. That's the best measurement of engagement. There's all kinds of great blog posts and stuff out there about member scoring, which in and of itself is
And
kind of an interesting topic.
And Dave, yeah, I fully agree with you. So I view the open rate as, how good have we how good a job have we done in our segmentation, right? Do we have the right audience that, we're seeing a higher open rate, and, how compelling is our subject line? And then the clicks is, like you said, a better measure of, how good is our value prop within that mail message. But yeah, definitely I wouldn't attribute opens to engagement per se.
So just for clarification, Kimberly asked because you mentioned that engagement increased during one of your campaigns. How do you know?
Because we weren't engaged, they weren't engaging with us at all before. We were getting, like no, again, we were talking at them, so we were just sending them. They weren't really responding. Typically it didn't ask them anything, didn't give them an opportunity to need to respond essentially. So, in this case, it asked them a question, and so that's where, yeah, it increased the engagement because I was kind of getting nothing before. So now I'm at least getting response from these companies.
So you might like, and there's all kinds of examples of this, but like I saw some of those where you're trying to push uh, educational stuff. Now, what you might do is promote a webinar or content, educational content. You can measure the number of people that are clicking on that. And then you can also measure the number that are clicking through the conversational engagement approach. Like that to me seems like the most mathematical, quantitative way of measuring um, engagement. All right. With that, Jonathan, Monica, thank you so much for your time. I think it's really cool when people join me in this to share their experiences. You're not getting anything out of this. You're helping the rest of the community and you're helping PropFuel as well. So thank you for that. Thank you very much. Thank you all for joining us today. We'll send out the slides. And naturally, if there's anything we do for you, reach out. You can reach me at dave@propfuel.com. Thank you all.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.